Restricted.
Restricted.
And leaked.
And leaked. Area 51. Bob Lazar.
Yeah. Secrets. Stay tuned.
Oh, right. All right, we're going to get right into the weeds here with Lazar's claims about flying saucers at Area 51. So when he claimed to have worked there, he said there were 9 alien aircrafts being held and studied at the base. In terms of what these alien crafts were being used for, more detail on that in a bit, but basically they were reverse engineering the alien technology. In terms of what these alien aircrafts looked like, Lazar described them as looking completely different from one another. Some of them he only got a quick glimpse of and were too far away to make out proper details, but a couple really stood out to him, and one he referred to as the Jello mold, describing it looking like, quote, your classic Jello mold with the ripples on the sides of it. One he saw looked more like a flat disc, and part of it was damaged. He figured maybe researchers had been maybe testing whether or not their weapons could penetrate it, or it could have just crashed or been shot down initially. And most of his research was happening at Area S4. But let's go to Hannah for more info on that.
Alright, thanks James. Unless you're living under a rock, I'm positive you have heard about Area 51, otherwise you probably wouldn't have clicked on this video. But do you know about Area S4? Well, neither did most people until Bob Lazar decided he was sick of the secrets and decided to tell the world. According to him, Area S4 is a secret base located in Nevada near its better-known counterpart, Area 51. So, why the super secret base connected to an already pretty secret base? Well, aliens. Alien spaceships, alien intel, alien technology, antimatter reactors, and Moscovium, also known as Element 151. More on that later. But Area S4 was aggressively denied by the government, who even went so far as to say that Bob Lazar never worked at the Area 51 base in the first place. But here's the thing. At one time, they had also said that there was no Area 51 base, and that they weren't big brothering us either. So in this case, I'm thinking I might be inclined to believe Bob for this one.
Now, Bob Lazar also gave vivid descriptions of the technology that was used to gain access into S4, hand scanners. Now, hand scanning tech may not seem all that impressive to us these days, but keep in mind, he was working at Area 51, or claimed to, in the late 80s, so this was pretty advanced technology for the time. If this is true, you can only imagine some of the futuristic tech they could have over there now. According to Bob Lazar, the security system at the S4 facility involved a unique and advanced hand scanning process. When you'd come up to secure areas, you'd be required to undergo a biometric scan using a hand scanning device. Lazar described this device as a very sophisticated piece of tech that scanned the unique patterns and features of the hand to grant access. He'd place his hand on a scanning surface, and the device would analyze all the specific contours and lines on the hand. The security measure was part of the stringent protocols that were in place to control access to all the extraterrestrial technology housed at S4. But now, back to Hannah.
Next up, the Roswell crash. Now, while Bob Lazar was not the first person to discuss a UFO crash landing in Roswell, New Mexico, he is the first person who has also claimed to have worked on a secret government base to discuss it. So, what is the Roswell crash? Well, it's an event that took place in 1947. A local farmer discovered what appeared to be a flying saucer crash landed in his backyard. The military was pretty quick to collect the debris. Initially, they were brought to a nearby base, but soon it was leaked that the specimen was sent to other bases in Texas and Ohio for further testing, saying that what had actually landed on the farmer's land was nothing more than a weather balloon. So why did they send it to so many testing facilities? Okay, what's even weirder is that 50 years after the incident, the Air Force released a report claiming that the wreckage was actually part of an espionage mission. Bob Lazar claimed that the whole thing was a poorly planned cover-up, and that the strange events that took place in the area after the crash were due to the fact that what had actually been collected was nothing less than an alien spacecraft. Seems like a lot of lying going on from the government there. They keep changing their story. I'm sure in another 50 years they'll tell us what it actually was.
During the Cold War, the US managed to get its hands on Soviet MiG-21 fighter jets and brought them to Area 51 for testing and study. Programs like Have Donut and Have Idea involved flying these captured jets to learn their strengths and weaknesses. Pilots tested the MiGs against American aircraft to figure out how to defeat them in combat. The jets were flown in secret with no public acknowledgement for decades. Studying these enemy planes gave the US military a major advantage by understanding Soviet technology firsthand. It helped improve American fighter designs and tactics. This was, of course, top secret work. Workers and pilots involved had to keep quiet, and any information about these programs was classified. Even now, the details are sketchy because the government still won't talk openly about what exactly happened during these projects. But what we do know is that Area 51 wasn't just a place for experimental American aircraft, it was also where they dissected and flew Soviet planes to stay ahead in the Cold War arms race. Between 1977 and 1981, Area 51 was home to secret test flights of the first stealth fighter prototype called Have Blue. This was the groundwork for what would later become the F-11-7 Nighthawk, the world's first operational stealth aircraft. The goal was to create a plane that could avoid radar detection. The design looked kind of weird, nothing like the sleek fighters you're used to. It was all about bouncing radar signals away so that enemy defenses wouldn't spot the plane. The tests were done at Groom Lake with intense security to keep any photos or sightings out of the public eye. Flying this new technology was not easy. The Have Blue had serious handling issues and crashed during test flights, but the program pushed stealth technology from theory into reality and changed the way wars would be fought from then on. Even though it's old news now, back then it was cutting-edge stuff, locked away in the desert, miles from anywhere. Nobody outside the program had any clue what was going on. During the Cold War, the US government supposedly ran a campaign to confuse the public and hide new military aircraft programs. They did this by planting fake UFO stories and even photos near places like Area 51. The idea was simple: get people chasing aliens and UFOs instead of the secret planes the military was building. For example, the F-11-7 stealth fighter we just talked about was being developed, and its usual shape was so strange that if people had seen it, they'd probably think it was something alien. So Pentagon officials encouraged UFO sightings and rumors to throw people off. These disinformation tactics worked. UFO stories exploded in the 50s and 60s, and most people didn't realize that many of these sightings were actually secret test flights of advanced aircraft. By focusing everyone's attention on flying saucers, the military bought itself time to develop new technology without interference or leaks. At least that's what some say. I don't know. Maybe this is just wishful thinking on my part, but I think there's still a very good chance there really is extraterrestrial research being done at places like Area 51. And finally, we have this mysterious road near Area 51. A while back, a YouTube channel called Finding UFO put out a video showing some satellite images that might hint at a secret entrance to the base. While scrolling through Google Earth, they spotted a road leading to a parking lot at the base of a mountain. But that road wasn't there back in 1998. Older satellite pictures show no road or parking lot at all in that spot. It's just empty land. So why build a road and parking lot in the middle of nowhere, right next to a mountain where it doesn't seem to lead anywhere? It doesn't make much sense for people to park there and then walk back down the road to get somewhere else. That got people thinking that maybe there's a hidden tunnel carved into the mountain itself. If that's true, what could be going on inside? What do you think though? Is something going on, or is this just people reading too much into nothing? Drop your thoughts down below.
We're talking about aliens and spacecrafts and some other things you might not know about what goes on behind the closed gates of Area 51. Starting us off today, we have a mission documented to the public by none other than Bob Lazar. You might have heard of him before. The mission took place in the 1980s and involved the reverse engineering of an extraterrestrial spacecraft fueled by an element that was supposedly undiscovered at the time and wouldn't be openly discovered until 2003 when a team of Russian and American scientists were able to synthesize it. The element was element 115, also known as moscovium. It's super heavy and highly radioactive and apparently out of this world, much like the spaceship Lazar claims to have worked on while working as an engineer on the base. He said that the spaceship had been collected by the agency along with 8 others. It was taken apart piece by piece and then replicated by the Area 51 team. The engineering mission was a success, and the homemade alien spacecraft took its first flight right in front of Bob Lazar's eyes. He claimed that it was nothing like anything he had ever seen before. It did not need any form of acceleration prior to takeoff, but rather the vessel lifted directly into the air and had the ability to fly at unseen speeds. Next up, we have the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Mission. That's a mouthful. A secret mission that operated out of the base with the purpose of identifying airborne threats to American land and its people, whether the threats be out of this world or not. I guess it makes sense that this was a classified mission. I mean, who really wants either a threat or target to know that they've got eyes on them? Since the operation began, it's become declassified, but it remains highly unpublicized, most likely due to censoring, along with the fact that there's really not much we know about it other than the fact that that's the name of it, and that's pretty much it. Sources have come forward, however, insisting that the program, which operated for 5 years between 2007 and 2012, with a budget of $22 million, was created for something much larger than international threats, claiming that the majority of the budget was dedicated to identifying and capturing intergalactic ones instead. Which of course brings us to the Roswell cover-up and others like it, aka the ongoing mission of the base to keep Americans and the rest of the world in the dark about what's really going on in our skies, our atmosphere, and our galaxy. The Roswell incident follows an aircraft that crash-landed in the field of a farmer in New Mexico. When Area 51 got news of the incident, they rushed to collect all the pieces and cover up all traces of the wreck. They claimed it was a weather balloon but never released any proof. And on top of that, what they collected from the farmer's property was sent to multiple other bases for a more in-depth analysis. If it was actually a weather balloon, I really don't see why that would be necessary. Of course, this isn't the only possible UFO cover-up known to date. Multiple sightings of UFOs have been reported and subsequently debunked, quote unquote, by officials at Area 51, but they rarely provide any information beyond a statement saying, "It's not what you think it is." Well, I don't think I believe them. Next up, we have hazardous waste disposal and the possible underground testing that took place in, on, around, or under Groom Lake, also known as Papoose Lake. That's a fun one to say, papoose. On January 30th of 1996, US President Bill Clinton signed a presidential declaration exempting the Air Force operations near the lake from having to comply with federal, state, interstate, or local hazardous or solid waste laws based on the grounds that it might require the disclosure of classified information. Wild! As you can imagine, this was terrible for locals in the area. I mean, the lake became illegal hazardous waste dumping ground. A lawsuit was filed alleging that the base had gone against the Conservation and Recovery Act in the area, but have no fear. In September of 2003, US President George W. Bush reiterated the fact that the military base was well within their rights to continue their lawless and potentially harmful waste disposal free of charge and without interference from the law. In the spring of 1997, 1 year after the allowance was originally granted, a man named Jerry Freeman somehow snuck his way onto the base and became the first civilian to see the lake after the hazardous disposals had begun. He described it as dried up and vibrating from the center with like a pulsing light, which led him to theorize that secret government experiments might possibly be taking place underneath or around the lake as well. Next up, we've got Mission Totally Spies. Not really, but it was totally a mission that involved a spy plane, more specifically the Lockheed U-2 spy plane, a United States aircraft that in August of 1955 had the ability to fly up to 70,000 feet high at 500 miles per hour. That's super advanced for the time. The reason that the plane was engineered, built, and tested on the base was because Area 51 is massive, which allowed the process of inventing, testing, and deploying the plane to take place virtually undetected. Well, kinda. I mean, the Soviets didn't see it, so that was a win for sure. Some locals did, and when they first saw the plane, they actually believed it to be some kind of alien spacecraft, which may lend a reason as to why the base became so intermingled with extraterrestrial folklore. For a while, the government let this line of thinking slide, but eventually revealed that what had been seen in the skies around Area 51 was in fact an advanced piece of espionage technology, or so they say.
Alright, next up we have Bob Lazar's description of briefing documents. So we've already covered, and we'll talk more about the alien aircrafts seen at the facility, but what about their origin? Does anyone know where these things came from? Well, according to Lazar, the government did have quite a bit of information on these alien beings, and this info was shared with him and other workers in briefing documents. They were part of a briefing that was provided to personnel working on the classified projects at S4. Lazar described the briefing documents as these detailed manuscripts that covered this whole range of topics related to the alleged extraterrestrial presence. They contained info about the history of these alien beings, their technology, and the reasons for their interactions with Earth.
So, in the beginning, James did mention the 9 spacecrafts being examined in Area 51, but furthermore, over at Base S4, it appears, according to Lazar, that they were actually able to figure out exactly how one of the vessels runs. And apparently, it's on Moscovia, aka element 115, or 115. The element supposedly first became known in 2003 after it was synthesized by a team of Russian and American scientists at a joint institute for nuclear research in Russia, although Lazar claims to have seen the element at the S4 base in the 1980s. So, what is element 115? Well, it's a super heavy radioactive element by bombarding the atoms of element americium, 243 with the ions of calcium 48. Hopefully I pronounced those somewhat correctly. Obviously, I don't recommend trying this at home. As I said, the element is radioactive, and also you probably can't do it at home unless you have some kind of $1 million lab stashed away in your basement. Anyways, I think that I do believe Lazar, because if anything's gonna power an alien spaceship, it's probably gonna be something heavy and radioactive. Back to you, James.
Now, aside from all the alien technology stuff and the inner workings of Area 51, there's another interesting story Bob Lazar has shared about his time working at the base, and that's that his phone needed to be tapped. The higher-ups needed to be able to listen in on Lazar's phone to help make sure he wasn't sharing any sensitive information over the phone, but also to help get a sense of his home life. Lazar wasn't allowed to share any info with anyone, of course, including his wife. She was completely in the dark about what he was doing day to day, and she began to think that he was having an affair. And then she started having an affair. The higher-ups at Area 51 knew this because they'd been listening in on his home phone, but Lazar had no idea. One day he came into work but was stopped from coming in. Then in the days that followed, he started noticing that he was being followed. He found out after the fact that they wanted to make sure Lazar wasn't going off the deep end due to marital problems, and that he'd be stable enough to continue his work at the base.
So, Lazar saw the base, and he saw the spacecraft, and he saw what powers it. And then, apparently, he saw military personnel reverse engineer it. Honestly, I don't know why they don't just release this information publicly. I mean, the Pentagon released a bunch of UFO footage, and we're supposed to believe that the best they can do is capture it on video? Like, isn't the United States supposed to have the most powerful military in the world or something? I'm just saying, it might make them look better, and smarter, and more capable if they just said, yeah, we found a spaceship, and it's ours now. But I guess you guys aren't here to listen to me rant about the pointlessness of gatekeeping UFOs. So, Lazar claims that by dissecting one of the vessels on base S4, the government was able to figure out how to build one themselves. Not only that, but he was actually one of the engineers who helped them do it. He also claims that the team used anti-gravity and antimatter technology while crafting the ship, and he had a front row seat to its initial launch.
Thank you, Hannah, and now I'm going to talk more about that launch. So because they knew how these vessels ran, the logical next step was to try taking one for a spin. Lazar described being called out to observe an aerial test of the spacecraft that he'd been helping to work on, and personnel were communicating with someone in the craft who is going to be piloting it. He described the craft as being very quiet, almost completely silent. On initial takeoff, it emitted a blue glowing discharge, making kind of a hissing sound, but once in the air, it just hovered silently. Then the craft did some simple maneuvers, moving around left to right in the air, before lightly landing back on the ground. Lazar was also told that because traffic in the surrounding area was apparently lowest on Wednesdays, that's when the more impressive flight tests took place. This is where they'd actually take the craft out and fly it higher over the test site and do more impressive maneuvers with it.
So, if Bob Lazar's claims turn out to be true, which they probably will, he will become one of the biggest United States whistleblowers to date, much like Edward Snowden, who revealed the magnitude of government surveillance back in May of 2013. But now that the UFO cat seems to be out of the bag, Lazar has begun to fear for his life. In an interview with 8 News Now, Lazar revealed that the only reason he chose to speak with the news channel was because he believed the government was after him, and he felt that he needed to be in the public eye to ensure his safety. This is the same reason that he claims to have produced his 2018 documentary, Bob Lazar, Area 51 and Flying Saucers. It's a very direct name, straight to the point. I like it. Lazar claimed that unfavorable things had started happening in his life after revealing the secrets of S4, which he did because he believed that by withholding the information regarding the existence of UFOs and alien intelligence, while many people have backed Lazar's story, with some even claiming to have witnessed the events that took place on the base as well, no one has garnered the same amount of popularity and scrutiny as Lazar, who has had all his credentials wiped from online databases and has been condemned and deemed as a liar by the United States military, who claimed that not only has Lazar never set foot on the base S4, but also that S4 doesn't even exist. But again, the military is known to lie, so let me know in the comments who you believe.
Toxic chemicals were openly burned in Area 51, and workers say it left them with serious diseases, while the government tried to keep everything covered up. In 2023, a whistleblower told Congress about a secret UFO recovery program, claiming they'd collected alien technology. And then there's the old Yankee Blue rumor, alleged Pentagon briefings about UFO crashes and alien bodies that even presidents supposedly couldn't always access. These are horrifying details about Area 51. Several former workers at Area 51 claim the base was the site of serious environmental problems. According to lawsuits, for years, hazardous chemicals like resins, paints, and solvents were openly burned in large pits at the site. These chemicals were apparently used to build classified military aircraft, like the stealth bomber. Workers say they regularly would inhale thick, toxic smoke as barrels of waste were doused in jet fuel and set on fire. Sometimes twice a week, they describe being ordered to climb into the burn pits after the fires died down to stir the ashes. A lot of workers developed serious health issues, like respiratory problems, strange skin conditions that cause these hard, scaly growths, which they nicknamed fish scales, and of course, cancer. 2 workers, Walter Kaza and Robert Frost, both died from diseases their families believe were caused by these toxic exposures. Biopsies of Frost's body showed there were high levels of industrial chemicals. When the workers and their families demanded answers, though, the US government refused to release any information. President Bill Clinton personally signed an order keeping the details classified, calling it a matter of national security. Even when the Environmental Protection Agency finally inspected the base, the results were kept secret. The government's official stance is that nothing illegal happened, because officially, nothing happens at Area 51. In July of 2023, former Air Force intelligence officer David Grush testified at Congress that he'd learned about a secret program recovering UFOs. He claimed that it included what he referred to as non-human biologics, and that people had died guarding this information. Grush explained that over 40 insiders had backed his story. He said he requested full access to the classified files but got shut down. And he offered to prove things in private, but still hit walls. Naturally, the Pentagon and NASA flatly denied anything like that existed. No UAP retrieval programs, no alien remains, nothing. But Grush didn't back off. He was quoted saying the whistleblower system failed him and that he's kept talking with reporters. No one's produced an alien artifact yet, but the claim that aliens or alien parts being recovered and hidden caught fire all over the internet. And if any place was going to stash something like that, people figured Area 51 was probably a good place. Yankee Blue was the name floating around in UFO circles, tied to a rumor about secret Pentagon briefings on recovered alien crafts. According to stories that surfaced in the 80s and 90s, a small group of insiders supposedly held these Yankee Blue meetings to get top-level briefings on UFO crashes, alien bodies, and what was really going on at places like Area 51. People like John Lear, Bill Cooper, and other big names in the UFO community passed these stories around, saying Yankee Blue was the go-to phrase for these alien crash retrieval programs. There was never hard proof, just a lot of word of mouth passed between UFO researchers, retired military guys, and some anonymous sources, but the idea stuck. They said these briefings talked about reverse engineering spacecraft and that bits and pieces of wreckage, possibly even biological material, had been stored at secure sites like Area 51. Some versions of the story claimed that even presidents only got access to these briefings if they had the right clearance, which supposedly wasn't automatic even for them. During the Cold War, Area 51 was used for weird weapons tests. In the late 50s and early 60s, the US military ran EMP, electromagnetic pulse experiments, near Groom Lake. They were small scale but powerful enough to knock out electronics from a distance. They were trying to figure out how to disable enemy aircraft or missiles without having to shoot them down. Locals sometimes saw these bright flashes in the sky or glowing objects zipping around the test areas, and it didn't take long for UFO sightings to pour in. People had no clue about EMP testing, and some of the lights matched classic UFO descriptions. Sudden movements, weird hovering, and moments where car engines or radios would briefly cut out. It's the kind of thing that if you didn't know what was being tested, would look exactly like some kind of alien technology. There are declassified records now that confirm these EMP experiments happened and that they caused interference with nearby equipment. Some even think the military leaned into the UFO stories on purpose to keep attention off of their real work. In the 80s, the government ran Project 57 near Area 51 to study what would happen if a bomber carrying a nuclear weapon crashed and spread plutonium. They simulated a crash involving real plutonium to see how far radioactive contamination would spread across the desert. The test involved detonating explosives to scatter plutonium particles over the ground. This left serious radioactive contamination in an area called Area 13, right next to the Area 51 test range. Even decades later, the site is off limits, fenced off with warning signs. Cleanup crews found plutonium had spread farther than expected, so some contaminated soil had to be dug up and buried deep in special waste sites. People involved in the project later said it was one of the most dangerous things done at the site. On January 5th, 1967, a CIA A-12 spy plane crashed near Area 51 after running out of fuel. The pilot, Walter Ray, had to eject, but his parachute didn't fully deploy, and he was killed on impact. The A-12 was a top-secret aircraft. It was so classified that even Ray's widow wasn't told what kind of plane he'd be flying. She was simply told he was on a routine mission. The wreckage scattered across the Nevada desert, and the CIA rushed to recover every piece before the public could find it. They even used cover stories, saying it was just a conventional jet to keep the A-12's existence hidden. Walter Ray was buried in the desert near the crash site with no public ceremony. The whole thing stayed secret for years. It wasn't until decades later that the full story came out, when the CIA finally declassified details about the A-12 program. Ray's name now appears on the CIA's memorial wall.
Okay, another great use for a massive secret base. Probably nuclear testing, right? Yeah, I think so. Do you think so? Because the fellows over at Area 51 definitely thought so. The base became a nuclear testing facility during the 1950s after the US, along with Canada and the United Kingdom, created the first nuclear weapon, aka the Manhattan Project. The base was used to test the severity and the risk level of the weapon, as well as its impact on environmental factors, along with environmental restoration techniques. A hazardous materials spill center was also built on the base, but I think we all know exactly how the majority of the hazardous waste was handled. Papoose. A crap ton of fission-type nuclear devices were detonated in the area, as well as dirty bombs, which are radioactive dispersal devices that combine radioactive material with conventional explosives. This led to a permanent change in the area's landscape, and to this day, the soils of the Nevada test site remain contaminated with radioactive materials. We are all aware that censorship is rampant in this day and age, but it's really nothing new, as highlighted by the publishing and quick removal of a photograph showcasing the base. The image was taken in 1998 by a Russian spy satellite. I'm not sure if they knew at the time that they had just struck American gold, but it seems as though in 2000 they came to realize exactly what they had achieved. The first ever photograph taken of Area 51, and from an aerial point of view no less, was released to the public. It was posted on a website called terraserver.com, which charged viewers around $7 to see the image. And it was actually totally legal, because in 1992 the Open Skies Treaty dictated that all 24 signatory nations, meaning all 24 nations who signed the treaty, had permission to photograph and publish each other's territories. What's strange though, is that shortly after the release of the photograph, the website was hacked and the photo disappeared. A website that was working just fine without any issues for years prior. After the image was released, the Pentagon did, however, finally acknowledge the fact that they did, in fact, have a large military base operating in Nevada, but provided no information regarding said operations. While the photo was removed back then, it's now back on the internet and available today. Speaking of the Pentagon, it seems as though in 2020 the public finally got their wish when the Pentagon finally declassified a number of videos and photographs that we were, all well aware that they had. I'm talking UFOs, baby. The Pentagon released the photos and videos on their official website, showcasing a variety of unidentified flying objects and aerial phenomena. Along with this, the FBI also declassified 16 documents outlining their thoughts and findings on the matter, although a lot of the information in the documents has been redacted. So the truth is out there. The government has admitted to having a secret base and to having been actively tracking UFO and UAP activities. But here is the thing. Are they feeding us this information because they really truly have decided to be transparent in their quest to uncover the secrets of the universe, or are they feeding us to keep our mouths shut? So apparently, before all the nukes and aliens and hazardous waste and spy planes and secrets, Area 51 was nothing more than a humble testing and training facility for the pilots of the U-2 aircraft. Apparently. Its official government name was, and actually still is, the Nevada Test and Training Range, a unit of Neal's Air Force Base. Doesn't really have the same ring to it though, if you ask me. Other nicknames for the base have been Paradise Ranch, The Ranch, Waterdown, and Dreamland, probably because they're dreaming if they think we don't know that they're holding on to aliens. Anyways, in November of 1959, about 4.5 years after the base was established, a radar testing facility became active. And as always with Area 51, while there is not much information out there as to what the radars are being used for, it has been speculated that their main purpose was to track the detectability of the U-2 aircrafts. Seems pretty obvious, but I feel like it's kind of weird that they didn't just come out and say that after the purpose of the U-2 spycraft was revealed. But I think I've given up on trying to figure out why they release the things they do and don't the things they don't. Anyways, finally on our list today we have the discovery of aliens and the subsequent experimentation on said aliens and their extraterrestrial modes of transportation. Now, in the beginning we already touched on the fact that the military personnel at Area 51 were allegedly able to reconstruct an alien spacecraft using reverse engineering. But just like how when there's smoke, there's fire, when there's an alien spacecraft, there must be an alien. Many members of the public believe that not only have the government found and taken into custody the ships of aliens, but the actual aliens themselves. Whether or not they are thin green men with oval heads and bulging eyes is still up for debate. Maybe we should get a petition going in the comments and see if the government will finally comply with the Freedom of Information Act. Or maybe they already have and they don't actually have to tell us everything. Who knows? I'm a YouTuber, not a lawyer.